channel. Today I am going to be sharing with you the story of Pretty Boy Floyd. Charles Arthur Floyd was born February 3rd, 1904 in Bartow County, Georgia. His family moved to Aikens, Oklahoma in 1911, which is where he grew up. At the age of 18, he was arrested for stealing $3.50 from a local post office. 3 years later, he was arrested for a payroll robbery. In September of 1925, in St. Louis, Missouri, he was sentenced to 5 years in prison for that robbery. He only served 3.5 years before being paroled. Now, after being paroled, he joined with other Kansas City criminals and committed a series of bank robberies. It's said that one payroll master that he robbed described him as a pretty boy with apple cheeks, and the nickname Pretty Boy Floyd was not a name that Charles liked. The remainder of this story is going to be told, and it's straight from Wikipedia. In 1929, Floyd was wanted in numerous cases. On March 9th, he was arrested in Kansas City on investigation, and again on May 7th for vagrancy and suspicion of highway robbery. But he was released the next day. 2 days later, he was arrested in Pueblo, Colorado, and charged with vagrancy. He was fined $50 and sentenced to 60 days in jail. Floyd was arrested in Akron, Ohio on March 8th, 1930, under the alias Frank Mitchell, and charged with the murder of an Akron police officer who had been killed during a robbery that evening. He was arrested in Toledo, Ohio, on suspicion on May 20th. He was convicted of a Sylvania, Ohio bank robbery and sentenced on November 24th, 1930, to 12 to 15 years in Ohio State Penitentiary, but he escaped. Killed Patrolman R. H. Kastner of Bowling Green, Ohio, on April 23rd. On July 22nd, Floyd killed federal agent Curtis C. Burke in Kansas City, Missouri. Former Sheriff Ari Kelly of McIntosh County, Oklahoma, was shot by Floyd while trying to arrest him on April 7th, 1932. In November, 3 members of Floyd's gang attempted to rob the Farmers and Merchants Bank in Boley, Oklahoma. Despite his life of crime, Floyd was viewed positively by the general public. When he robbed banks, he allegedly destroyed mortgage documents, but this has never been confirmed and may be myth. He was often protected by locals of Oklahoma, who referred to him as Robin Hood of the Cookson Hills. Floyd and Adam Rachetti became the primary suspects in a gunfight known as the Kansas City Massacre on June 17, 1933, which resulted in the deaths of 4 law enforcement officers. J. Edgar Hoover used the incident to empower the FBI to pursue Floyd, although historians are divided as to whether Floyd was involved. was an attack by Vernon Miller and accomplices on lawmen escorting robber Frank Jelly Nash to a car parked at the Union Station in Kansas City, Missouri. Kansas City detectives William Grooms and Frank Hermanson, Oklahoma Police Chief Otto Reed, and FBI Special Agent Ray Caffrey were killed. Nash was also killed while sitting in the car, shot in the head by his would-be rescuers. 2 other Kansas City police officers survived by slumping forward in the back seat and feigning death. As the gunmen inspected the car, another officer responded from the station and fired at them, forcing them to flee. Miller was found dead on November 27, 1933, outside Detroit, Michigan. He'd been beaten and strangled. Floyd and Ricchetti were allegedly Miller's accomplices. Factors weighing against them included their apparent presence in Kansas City at the time, eyewitness identifications which have been contested, Ricchetti's fingerprint recovered from a beer bottle at Miller's hideout, an underworld account naming Floyd and Ricchetti as the gunmen, and Hoover's firm advocacy of their guilt. Fellow bank robber Alvin Karpus claimed that Floyd confessed involvement. On the other side of the issue, the bandit alleged to have been Floyd was supposed to have been wounded by a gunshot to the shoulder in the attack, and Floyd's body showed no signs of this injury when examined later. The underworld account identifying Floyd and Ricchetti as the killers was offset by equally unreliable underworld accounts proclaiming their innocence. The Floyd family has maintained that Floyd admitted to many other crimes, but vehemently denied involvement in this one, as did Ricchetti. Kansas City police received a postcard dated June 30th, 1933, from Springfield, Missouri, which read, "Dear Sirs, I, Charles Floyd, want it made known that I did not participate in the massacre of officers at Kansas City. Charles Floyd." The police department believed the note to be genuine. Floyd also reportedly denied involvement in the massacre to the FBI agents who had fatally wounded him. In addition, a recent book on the massacre attributes at least some of the killing to friendly fire by a lawman who was unfamiliar with his weapon based on ballistic tests. The FBI named Floyd public enemy number 1 on July 23rd, 1934, following the death of John Dillinger lying by the roadside. They thought it suspicious and informed Wellsville, Ohio Police Chief John H. Foltz. Foltz investigated with officers Grover Potts and William Irwin. Ricchetti saw the lawman and fled into the woods, pursued by 2 officers, while Foltz went towards Floyd. Floyd immediately drew his gun and fired, and he and Foltz engaged one another in a gunfight, during which Foltz was wounded in the foot, and Potts was wounded in the right shoulder, and Floyd then fled into the forest. The other 2 officers enlisted the help of local police officer Chester C. Smith, who has been a sniper during World War I, and they captured Ricchetti. Floyd remained on the run. The entire team opened fire, knocking him to McKee Jr., David E. Hall, and Winfred E. Hopton, led by Purvis and 3 members of the East Liverpool Police Department, Herman H. Roth Jr., Chester C. Smith, and Glenn G. Montgomery, led by Chief Hugh McDermott, were searching the area south of Clarkston, Ohio, in 2 cars. They spotted a car, moved from behind a corn crib, and then moved back. Floyd then emerged from the car and drew a .45 caliber pistol, and the FBI agents opened fire. Floyd reportedly said, "I'm done for. You've hit me twice." According to a contemporary news account, Floyd crawled out of the corn crib toward the Dyke automobile and then changed direction toward a wooded ridge. Purvis yelled halt, but Floyd ran. Purvis called out fire, and Floyd was mortally wounded by 4 bullets. Handcuffs were placed on his wrists. Floyd asked, "Who the hell tipped you?" He refused to answer Purvis' questions on the Kansas City massacre, but did say, "I am Floyd. Where is Eddie?" referring to Adam Richetti. Thinking he had been shot twice, he remarked, "You got me twice." Purvis did not disclose Floyd's last words. Allegedly, 4 days before, Floyd and 2 accomplices had robbed a bank of $500. Floyd's share of his last bank robbery was $120. Among Floyd's effects found on him was a watch and a fob. Each had 10 notches. Allegedly, for 10 persons Floyd had killed. Retired East Liverpool Police Captain Chester Smith described events differently in a 1979 issue of Time magazine. He was credited with shooting Floyd first, and he stated that he had deliberately wounded Floyd but not killed him. "I knew Purvis couldn't hit him, so I dropped him with 2 shots from my .32 Winchester rifle." According to Smith's account, Floyd fell and did not regain his footing, and Smith then disarmed him. At that point, Purvis ran up and ordered, "Back away from that man. I want to talk to him." Purvis questioned Floyd briefly and received curses in reply. So he ordered Agent Herman Hollis to fire into him. Hollis then shot Floyd at point-blank range with a submachine gun, killing him. The interviewer asked if there was a cover-up by the FBI, and Smith responded, "Sure was, because they didn't want it to get out that he'd been killed that way." FBI Agent Winfred E. Hopton disputed Smith's claim in a letter to the editors of Time, published in the November 19th, 1979 issue. He stated that he was one of 4 FBI agents present when Floyd was killed on a farm several miles from East Liverpool, Ohio, according to Hopton. Members of the East Liverpool Police Department arrived only after Floyd was already mortally wounded. He also claimed that when the 4 agents confronted Floyd, he turned to fire on them, and 2 of the 4 killed him almost instantly. Smith's account said that Herman Hollis shot the wounded Floyd on Purvis's order, but Hopton claimed that Hollis was not even present. At least one other source discredits Smith's version, stating that although Smith's story received wide currency, Hollis was not at the orchard that afternoon. Hollis's FBI profile does not mention his participation in this incident. Hopton also stated that Floyd's body was transported back to East Liverpool in Hopton's own car. Sturgis Funeral Home in East Liverpool, Ohio, before being sent on to Oklahoma. His body was placed on public display in Sallisaw, Oklahoma. His funeral was attended by between 20,000 and 40,000 people and remains the largest funeral in Oklahoma history. He was buried in Aikens, Oklahoma. Thank you for joining me, and I hope you enjoyed